I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly. I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook. I'm a philosopher in Greeley, Colorado, and with me is TJ Wilson, businessman, lover of theology, and enneagram ninja.
Hello.
A man who was up way too late last night serving a bunch of folks getting married, yeah?
No, they weren't. They were all gone by the time I got into work. This is just serving random people coming in on a Friday night.
Just a late night at the coffee shop.
Yep.
Rock and roll.
There were a few of them. It worked.
What's your favorite thing about hanging at the coffee shop late at night?
I'm a nighttime person. I like the night. So it feels nice to just be out somewhere and not at a really loud, obnoxious bar.
There it is. Yeah, it's a different vibe.
Mm-hmm.
More calm and peaceful.
Yeah.
Not a lot of coffee shop fights break out on Friday nights.
Not a lot. It happens, but it's not super common.
Well, we're on step 4 of our deep dive into steps. We're calling step 4 stance work. And in my mind, this is the peak. You have walked up a mountain, you get to the top, go down the other side. This is the peak. This is the work. Dealing with your low side, understanding your number, and then doing stance work.
Yep.
That's the effort. Everything from here, man, it's just walking downhill.
Well, and honestly, like we've said this over and over again, and this wisdom comes from Suzanne, who might have gotten it from somebody else, but like you could park here for the rest of your life. If you're only going to do one thing with Enneagram knowledge, stance work is probably the one thing to do, and that's stuff that you could be working on for the rest of your life.
I got a reason that comes to mind for why she would say that. What comes to your mind? Like, why would she say that?
I think that because A, stance work is so important, and B, because there's so many aspects that go into, like there's sort of like unfolding layers about what stance work is. Like you can come back to this well and it will never run dry.
Agreed. That's a good answer. The thing that goes through my mind is that if you were to ask what is really the benefit of the Enneagram, there's all sorts of things you might kick out. But in my mind, the primary is the Enneagram gives you balance. And the primary way you get balance is here. It's shoring up your repressed center, doing some stance work. Balance is a big target, and it comes out in a lot of the things we say. One of the things, the glories and beauties of balance, I really think are being showcased in a world like ours right now, because so much of our world, of pop culture, of political culture, et cetera, it just feels like we're living on the extremes all the time. But you find somebody who's truly balanced, and you're like, that is a healthy person,
right?
You know?
Like, how do I get there? I want that.
Beauty. There is a beauty in inner goodness that comes out in my mind. Like, this is just one of the fruit. This is one of those places you see somebody of this sort and you're like, I don't know how they got there, but that's where it's at.
Yeah.
Well, in good news, we got a road to get there right here.
Love it.
We need to talk about repressed centers and stance work. If you have not done the first 3 steps, we highly suggest you jump there first. But if you don't go to step 1 and understand your stance and what that means about your repressed center, we would certainly encourage you to push back into episode 1 on this. But what's the skinny on your stance and your repressed center?
Yeah, the basic thing is that we all have 3 intelligent centers. This is an evolutionary concept. This is this shows up in all kinds of disciplines that we are made up of head, heart, and body, and we process the world around us through those 3 centers, through cognitive thinking, through relational and feelings and sentimentality, and we also process the world through our bodies, through our intuitions, and through the action that comes out of that space. So 3 centers: head, heart, gut, head, heart, body, or thinking, feeling, doing is another way of saying these things. And we all rely more heavily on one of these 3 centers than the other 2. And then a second one sort of comes up and supports the primary center. And then there's this third one that gets repressed. So ones, for instance, ones are primarily body center types. The world around them is processed through this intuitional sort of way, and they're action centered. And then their feeling center is supporting that. So you could say it that they act on their feelings, but they're repressed in their thinking center. They don't do really productive thinking. So that's what that means. It's unproductive in the repressed center. It's not doing that third center well or efficiently, or like we're just bad at our repressed center.
To build on that, it seems to me that stance is how you get what you want. And each of us get what we want in ways that really rely on 2 of the centers, thinking, feeling, and doing, and the third one is repressed. And all of us engage the world from those primary 2 centers in getting what we want. But if you're able to elevate that third, it just unleashes healthy human beings.
Opens up everything. That's the work you could be doing for the rest of your life. Figure out that one thing.
So if you have a hard time doing productive thinking or feeling or doing, the real work for finding balance is there. So we're going to use the word productive. Always want to give footnotes. I think that's a Stabile term. Like, not all the things that are created Enneagram-wise are through Stabile, but I think that's her word in discovery, that it's about productive thinking versus unproductive thinking, or productive doing versus unproductive doing. Very helpful word. Naming that repressed center and then focusing on productivity there, lifelong work, super beneficial.
Agreed.
Bang.
I also want to insert, this is probably going to be sort of naturally peppered throughout this whole conversation, but part of our stance also, there's a big emphasis on the orientation to time. And so like this, you'll see this play out within the way that each stance, like how their repressed center interacts with their orientation to time, it fits very naturally. So 3s, 7s, and 8s are future focused, and they are repressed in their feeling center. And so like moving forward sort of discards feelings. 1s, 2s, and 6s are present focused, and they are repressed in their thinking center. And 4s, 5s, and 9s are past focused, and they are repressed in their doing center. So that will come up more naturally throughout the conversation, but I just wanted to make sure that was part of this.
Very important. We did 2 episodes on that in fall 2021, I believe, and they're just labeled time and relationships.
Yeah.
Some of them are more listened to podcasts, by the way.
People seem to like those.
One last thing that's worth naming here. This is something that TJ and I are still in conversation about in terms of just like where we actually land. But one of the real fruits that comes from elevating your repressed center is this is a door that opens to security.
Yeah.
Security, we're hesitant to think of security as the goal, as the target. The target is actually balance, being a healthy person. But it sure feels good to be secure.
Yeah. But you can do that in healthy and unhealthy ways. So,
Correct.
like, it feels good to be secure, but if you're damaging the people around you because you don't care, then it's not a good thing to be secure.
If it were the case that you were saying, how do I get to the high side of security? This would be one of the doors.
Yep.
The door is this. When you elevate your repressed center, it opens you to your security number, or you are engaging places where you're using your security numbers tools. So 1s are going to engage their 7-ness when they think well. And 2s are going to engage their 4-ness when they're aware of thinking about their own emotions. 3s are going to engage their 6-ness the feelings of others, their own place when they feel well. 4s are going to engage oneness by acting on their emotions with wisdom. 5s are going to engage eightness by acting on their rich thought life. 6s are going to find some calm at 9 by engaging real clear-headed thinking. 7s are going to focus at 5 by centering here and now on their full inner life. 8s are going to engage 2ness by caring for the feelings of others, recognizing their own feelings and that they're not as vulnerable as they might believe. And 9s are going to engage 3ness by acting in the world in praiseworthy ways. You can see how that door opens up.
Yeah. It's like the stance work, the work of elevating your repressed center. It's like it sort of unlocks these new skills, and you gain easier. It's like almost like a shortcut to gain access to the things you need at your security point.
Yep. Feels like a marriage there. It's almost like a two-way street that your security number and your primary center kind of meet in those spaces and the door opens, as opposed to a chicken and the egg, which comes first.
Right.
I get the sense that there is effort, but that somehow your security number's tools kind of meet you in that effort. And as we've kind of said in the past, there's something about going to the high side of your security number that's filled with grace.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put that. That's my experience.
Yeah. There's things you get there that you can't manufacture. You can't create on your own. There are lots of habits and there's things in the world that we can get by working hard enough, but there are a lot of things that you can't get by working hard enough. You just receive it, and going to security in really healthy ways, you receive stuff that you can't make.
The stuff we're going to do is almost like creating the platform for that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Say it were the case that you're a marathon runner. You can do all the effort to run the marathon, but you can't manufacture the joy of the experience of the marathon. Like, it might be miserable, you know?
And that's what it sounds like to me.
That's right. Like, relationships are this way, where becoming the kind of person who is worthy of love is a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
But you can never produce by your own effort somebody loving you.
Right.
And I don't know, that's how I experience my security number on the high side. I can get to the low side of security real quick with a bottle of gin.
Yeah, that part's easy. Low side of security is easy. High side it's a lot of work, and the things you get there, you receive once you get there.
Yep. So we're going to start with the aggressive types. 3, 7s, and 8s are going to have unproductive feelings. They're going to be assertive in getting what they want. You want to talk about 3, 7s, and 8s and not having productivity in their emotional life?
Yeah, it's great. Aggressive or demanding or assertive. A lot of 3s don't like the word aggressive, but they do like assertive. Nobody really likes demanding except for 8s. I mean, basically these types are like I said earlier, they're future focused. They have goals. They have things that they're aiming at, and they want to get there, and they want to get there in the most efficient way possible. And all 3 of these types don't have a solid, healthy, and effective relationship to their feeling center. And that plays out in very different ways. 7s are looking for they want things to be enjoyable, and they're sort of running away from from unpleasant experiences because they don't want to be stuck in those unpleasant experiences. So they would say that they are great at feelings so long as you're talking about the good feelings. But that means they're not engaged with half of life. They're not engaged appropriately with all of the things that make us more whole people by experience. Like you can't really have great without understanding what terrible is, and so they're stunted. They're missing out on this richness that comes from the lower side of feelings. 8s are. They don't even have a plan. They're already doing their plan. They have a goal that they have goals that they are working towards, and they are actively pursuing those goals at all times. And they don't really care about who they hurt to get to their place, because the thing that they're doing is more important. And they have actually worked so hard to create this sort of protective barrier to make sure that the inner vulnerabilities, that they don't get hurt on the inside, that their inner person doesn't get damaged, which means that they aren't engaged with that inner person. It means they aren't engaged with their own soft, gooey center in appropriate ways. And it also means that they don't understand other people's soft, gooey center that well. And threes, while threes are actually taking in everything through their feeling center, they interpret other people's feelings really well, because they need to know what you want so that you will think they're great. So they're going to engage that. They get that. But they're not engaged with their own center, their feeling space, because those feelings get in the way of them being whoever it is you want them to be and of accomplishing their goals. And feelings are messy. They're inefficient. They get in the way. That is all stuff that we can deal with later, because I have these goals that I want to accomplish right now. And all three of these types, because they don't really fully engage their own emotional center, they really, really do not understand the impact that they have on other people.
That's the thing that's well worth saying. Oftentimes, like when we have a conversation with Sean Palmer that we're going to release here in a month or two, he described assertive types as those who are moving against others or moving in spite of others, I believe. Mm-hmm. It's almost like other people's feelings are the problem, but it's actually feelings in total. It's both other people's feelings and not understanding or doing real business with one's own feeling.
Right.
That's the problem.
Right.
It's the whole category is a huge obstacle.
Right.
My feelings, their feelings, they're just an obstacle to the fun we need to have, to the goal that we need to pursue.
The work we need to accomplish.
Yeah. There it is. As such, there's a huge hole in being a holistic person.
Right. And this is the way that each of these repressed centers sort of expresses itself in the world. You can see doing repressed most cleanly because, they're not doing anything. Thinking repressed is actually a little bit harder to see, but feeling repressed is the one that we almost celebrate it in our culture. Yep. Because of the ways that we've sort of denigrated being openly emotional. It's a problem. It's a huge problem. And I think we're moving away from that, which is nice. But most of these, like most 3, 7s, and 8s have actually been encouraged, whether directly or indirectly through like film and media and whatever else, that dealing with those emotional centers are... It's okay to not ever worry about this. And that's just it's just a false thing that we've been teaching people.
Yeah. Just to earmark it, I think maybe the only time that I'm really glad that these types are feeling repressed is when there's a huge emergency.
Yep.
I've been in a room, a few rooms in which a woman is giving birth, in which something goes very badly. And then all of a sudden it's actually those who are more assertive who step up, speak, cut through the emotion of the moment and say this is what needs to get done.
Yeah.
That can be real helpful. It's a superpower. It's a great good. It would be bad if you lived in that space.
And it would be bad if that was the only thing happening in the room.
Sure. Okay, yeah, talk about that.
If there's no one in that space who is capable of understanding and engaging the feeling center, mm-hmm. then the person who absolutely needs to take charge and move things forward, they could potentially be discarding things that are really important.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, there is a wonderful dance that takes place between the driven goal-orientedness that we see here and real wisdom and emotional intelligence. Like there's a sweet spot to be found.
Yep. And it all comes back to balance.
Yeah.
Balance is the word of the day.
It's elusive, but that is the golden target right there.
Right.
In good news, the 3, 7s, and 8s out there are just itchy to hear, all right, well, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? Bring it. What are the practices that are going to make me more emotional?
Y'all are not going to like our answers.
I like our answers. The first one that hits me is that these types would benefit hugely by creating spaces where there are others who they trust, where they can be deeply authentic about their inner life.
Yeah. And where they are intentional about receiving the inner life of others without needing to fix it or change things.
Let's pause on that one. That feels like a second step.
Okay.
Am I wrong? Because that's about other people's feelings?
I think it's you have to practice both things.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And they will actually feed each other.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense as you say it that way.
If you only ever do biceps on one arm, you're going to look real dumb.
Yeah.
And your arms aren't going to work right.
Perhaps it could be twofold. Maybe if it's the case that you're creating a space of trust with somebody who is clearly older and more mature, that is a space I think that you don't necessarily need to hear about their feelings.
Agreed.
So if a 3, 7, and 8 is going into therapy,
Yep.
that's a healthy spot for them to be in.
Yes.
Don't necessarily need to ask about the therapist's kids, although you can.
You can. I think trying to enter into that two-way street relationship with your therapist is a bad idea. And your therapist should know that too.
Right. Throw it back on you.
Yeah.
If you are meeting with your peers, I think you're entirely right.
Yep. And if I think everyone needs therapy. I think we need therapy, and like that's normal, healthy, good thing to pursue. I think that 3, 7s, and 8s a great place to engage their own emotional center would be in a safe space like therapy. But if you're going to do that, you also need to find this other space where you're practicing receiving as well.
Yes. Right. I think you do that with your friends. I have the great joy of having this relationship with a 3, with a 7, and an 8. The 3 is my wife, and I get to see that kind of symbiotic back and forth of, true vulnerability, and we get to go there. I have a 7 friend who I communicate with on Marco Polo, and it's an app where you just send videos to one another. But that is a space where this person gets to really open up. And a lot of times with 8s, we've used this phrase before. It's the shooting blanks, exposing places where I feel vulnerable, even weak. That can be very, very valuable if you have peers in those spaces.
Yep.
I suppose the last kind of relationship, I would love your thoughts on this. It's when that person is the authority figure, the 3, 7, and 8. They are the teacher, they're the parent, and they're speaking with somebody who's younger. But in that relationship, they open up their heart.
Yeah, or should. There has to be like the wisdom and the balance. You have to recognize that in those kinds of relationships, there are going to be times where you are trying to shape them, to sort of mold these people, these apprentices, these children, these whatever, however they're quote unquote underneath you. Part of your role in their life is to help shape them moving forward, but part of your role in their life is to recognize who they are on the inside. And sometimes you are going to want to shift them, to change them, when actually you need to help them embrace themselves as they are.
I could see those sorts of relationships, now that we're talking about it, being a very safe place, because the 8's not going to feel vulnerable, sharing with the person who is perhaps younger. Like imagine a 40-year-old 8 who's speaking to their 10-year-old. That 10-year-old isn't a threat, or the 7 speaking to their daughter, saying something like, what, sometimes I'm afraid too, The 3 doesn't feel like they need to perform for the 6-year-old who has boogers on their face. That's a safe space.
Right. But it's also a space that could easily be, these types, especially as parents, can easily ignore the feelings of that person because they want their child to come out a certain way, to grow up a certain way.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a safe space to tap in, but also you have to be really intentional about recognizing that, about not completely controlling this person.
Speaking of therapy on this front, when we did our interview just recently with Michael Shahan, that was the thing. He said something exactly of that sort in terms of it's not your job to get your kid to look a certain way. And that was actually the thing that my 3 wife really resonated with most. What you're responsible for is creating atmospheres where they can thrive and become who they're wired to be.
Right.
A second practice that we have is slowing. There is an adrenaline rush that comes from getting it done. There's an adrenaline rush that comes from higher, faster, louder, from a new adventure, from jumping out of another airplane.
Right.
There's an adrenaline rush from being on stage and getting another trophy, as it were.
And even just ticking off the boxes on the to-do list. That's I know people who make a to-do list on their to-do list so that they can check off the box. It's so weird to me. I don't get lists. I'd rather take a nap.
Of all things, when we get to 9s, I have prioritized lists as something.
Seriously, it's a big
to
deal.
bring up. There is something about naming. Put this on your list if you want. You need to slow down.
Yep.
Don't shoot to accomplish 5 life goals in the next 6 months. Embracing the intentional rhythms of the season, understanding your place in the here and now, and then giving yourself permission to stop is a great good.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of the places where that future focus is really noticeable and sort of it fights back a bit here because 3, 7s, and 8s are all moving towards something. They're you referenced Sean talking about moving against, and like they're going, they're getting stuff done, and they're always looking to something on the horizon. And the reality is, the Earth is round, and the horizon is always coming. And for all 3 of these types, if you don't slow down every once in a while, you can't engage your feelings, because feelings it's not a goal you can accomplish. It's something that you have to just spend time in, and you have to slow down to be able to do that.
It's a good word. Got a chance to rewatch the fantastic Spike Lee movie Malcolm X the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Movie about Nate. The turning point in his life, played by Denzel Washington, is when he submits to spiritual direction.
Yeah.
And he's obviously a Muslim. The image of surrender that comes out of Islam, real powerful. And it's portrayed in that movie in terms of his spiritual journey in a wonderful way. And what you see is a super healthy person emerge in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
The more that he takes on a submissive posture to spiritual direction, and that might be another step for 3, 7s, and 8s.
Right. And that's another place that like all of these things, you can see how they sort of fit together and like work toward the same goal. Submitting to spiritual direction, that can be a space of slowing, of having to entering into that safe space kind of area. And yeah, you have to be vulnerable if you're going to be engaged with some kind of spiritual direction, because if you're not telling the truth about what's going on inside, then it's pointless.
Yep. A 4th step, I can't overstate the value of this, is what we might call waiting, is naming things that you cannot possibly get right now that are really valuable to you, and holding them loosely.
Yeah.
And just saying, I know that in a year or in 3 years, this will materialize, and I'm not going to push. I'm simply going to allow it to come to me in the appropriate time.
Yeah.
I hate this practice, and it's been I'm
It's
not
where I live, man.
I'm not an assertive type, but it is the case that I've had this experience a lot here the last 2 or 3 years, and it's one of those things that I can look back now and just really name as a real value.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a 3s, 7s, and 8s, all, whether they are aware of it or not, they fundamentally believe that they can shape the world around them according to how they see it. Mm-hmm. And that's just not always true. Like, there's a lot of things you can do to take charge of your life and change things. And like, if you don't like where you live, you can move. And there's so many things about if I remember talking to an 8 recently that he said that when he wants to make change in his life, he just does it. And he doesn't understand people who do it. And it's like, well, no, but there are so many other factors about how this actually plays out for so many different people. Like maybe you have a physical disease, and so exercising is actually really bad for you. So you can't just like become fit. Like there's obstacles for lots of people because you see the world differently than how other people see it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to recognize that the thing that you want to get to, you can't make it on your own.
Yep.
And you may just have to wait for it to happen, especially because other people have agency as well.
I would love to give 2 examples on this because I could see 3, 7s, and 8s out there going, I don't know what the hell you're talking about here.
Yeah, this is a place where you need to think about, engage your feeling center.
One example would be monetary. It would be with investments. Mm-hmm. One investor, very famous, presently is sitting on $150 billion of cash and has publicly said he can't find anything to buy because no opportunities have really presented themselves
I
that
heard
he's
Twitter's
interested
up for sale.
That's a 7 making that happen.
Oh, right.
By the way, side note, in a recent podcast, Elon Musk was engaged. We talked about Musk in the context of 5s, but that man's a 7.
Sure.
Just as he's going to play with that toy for 2 years and then go do something else.
Oh, yeah.
So we know this. It just didn't get on tape.
He's not really going to even like get rid of the toy. He's just going to drop it and walk away.
Like,
ooh, something shiny.
the thing about this particular investor is this is his whole. It's Warren Buffett, but he'll wait like 5 years. But then something happens. There's, the housing market crashed in 2008. That dude bought a New York bank for nothing in 2008. It's like, and you can't manufacture that. You just have to wait. You have to be powerful. You have your resources and assets, and you're simply waiting. A second thing that I'm experiencing personally is that we're simply waiting for one of our children's brains to develop. And we know that it's not developed right now. And we know that in 5 years, they're going to be in a much healthier spot. Their emotional life will come into balance, their ability to connect with the world. But there is so much physiologically that we can't control.
Yeah.
And it's just a waiting game.
Literally, like, there's nothing that you can do to speed up science.
Yes. So much of our world, and we've talked about this a lot, especially with American culture, man, it is propelled by 3, 7s, and 8s half the time. And it's a can-do attitude. That's fantastic. Like, I go to Europe, and I have family in Europe, and they're always like, they hire Americans all the time because of that can-do attitude. They love it. It's very different in that culture. But on the flip side, sometimes you do have to wait for the sun to rise. You want to plant tomatoes in March, but you got to wait till May or they're all going to die.
Especially if you live in Colorado. There will be a freeze and they're all going to die.
It comes out of the blue every single year. I'm like, it's time to turn the sprinklers on. And then all of a sudden, I've just ruined my sprinkler system.
But you should know better because you've lived in Colorado for your whole life.
But I'm thinking repressed, and that's a problem. Another activity is retreat. I think that all the types can benefit from retreat, but finding places where you can't accomplish anything for 3, 7s, and 8s is real valuable.
Yeah.
For different reasons. You got thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's setting aside the things that you need to get done. It's letting go of the to-do list. It's stepping away from your normal rhythms. It's There's all kinds of things to be said about leaving what you're used to, and this is the whole. This is the hero's journey. But for these types particularly, it's always working towards some kind of goal. When you step outside of the arena where your goals exist, then you gain the opportunity to think about something other than those goals, the accomplishments, the work that you're trying to get to.
Yep. 7s might be licking their chops. Of course I want to go on a vacation.
Of course you do.
There's something about the productive retreat for the 7 of intentionally designing the space where you will engage your inner life. What does that look like? What does that retreat look like? Where you've created space to do inner work. That's actually the retreat that 7s need. 3s and 8s are probably obvious.
Right. Well, then, like when my spouse and I went on our honeymoon, we went to an all-inclusive retreat in Mexico, which I highly recommend, by the way. But we realized that 5 days was too long to do nothing. And I'm very good at doing nothing. 5 days is too long, and we should have booked some other things. And like I'm looking at the list of things that are available in the area of where we were, and like there's all kinds of activities and like boat trips and parasailing and like we're surrounded by a town, so there's places to go and like things to see and shows and whatever else. And 7s are naturally engaged with all of the things that are available on those trips. That's like why aren't we doing all of them? And the retreat for 7s is actually to not go and do all of the things.
Yes.
Because if you're just taking your list of all of the things that you're doing at home and just transcribing it to all the things that you're doing on vacation, then you're doing the same thing just in a different location.
Exactly right. Lastly, and I have this for each of the types, this would be the spiritual practice of prayer. However, prayer may work for you in your heart and how you connect with the world and with God and the rest. Prayer can be and has been one of those traditional places that lots of people go to shore up their repressed center. And so for these types, it seems to me in prayer that acts of confession and really taking a full inventory is incredibly valuable. Because it's pushing into your inner life and it's pushing into your mistakes and missteps and places that things are kind of dark and places that you feel insecure and like a failure, feel inadequate, and elevating them and in doing so, again, in a safe space. Right.
And I think meditation can serve in this purpose as well if you aren't a particularly spiritual or religious person. The engaging intentionally with your inner self and sort of letting that self like acknowledging and maintaining space for that inner self to reveal itself. Like that's part of what confession is. That's what the full inventory is. Like for those of us who are religious, we're trying to connect with some power outside of ourselves, but even if you're not, there's still a space here where you are intentionally engaging with your inner life.
On the flip side, for me, are prayers of forgiveness for others. I think that ends up being helpful if somebody has wounded you. An act of forgiveness, even if it's just spoken to God, ends up for somebody else can be very powerful. I think in terms of elevating that person and, kind of in tandem to that, prayers of blessing on others can be very powerful. I think this is one of those things you see in Martin Luther King Jr. all the time. The posture of blessing enemies or blessing those who are even on the fence in terms of his work ends up just unleashing a very powerful person. And it is engaging the emotional life of another person and saying, I long for your good.
Yeah.
And that can be that's a thing to do, but in doing it, you're elevating your feeling center.
Right. And obviously there's a lot to be said about like, we're not advocating for,
If somebody's abusing you, you need to leave. You can pray for them from another room.
we're not advocating for just blessing your abusers, but there is a space about, like, I'm not sure who said it. I think it might have been Anne Lamott, but like, unforgiveness is drinking rat poison and expecting it to hurt the other person.
Yeah.
And like this act is engaging your inner life, and it's also letting go of these things which you are not engaging. You're actually just putting on a shelf that are toxic to you, and you're letting them go, and they're not in control of you anymore.
Like, unforgiveness is drinking rat poison and expecting the rat to die. Yeah, is her phrasing.
There it is.
Comes from, it's actually a riff on something the Buddha says.
Okay.
Those are the practices for assertive types. I want to do a special note here, and it's something that you'll see if you listen back, and it's something you'll hear as we move forward, is these are exercises. They are about forming something within you, and all of the things that we're going to talk about are of that sort. They strengthen places that are naturally quite weak.
Right.
And that's something that requires intentionality. It requires discipline. But all the best things in terms of making us healthy generally have that quality to them, yeah?
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of value to building up the things that you're good at, but realistically, if you never spend time on the things that you're bad at, particularly when we're talking about these intelligence centers, if you never really engage the one that you're bad at, then you're always going to be a little off balance. It's that you're sitting on a 3-legged stool and one of the legs doesn't work right, and you're eventually going to fall over.
That's it. Brings us to the withdrawn types. Withdrawn types, 4s, 5s, and 9s, struggle with unproductive doing. Give me the skinny.
Well, so withdrawn types are unproductive doing is a really interesting thing. This is the one that's easiest to see because it means that we're not engaged with the things that need to get done. And it's better to think, like, the word unproductive is really key here, because it does not necessarily mean that these types are not doing things, is that they're not putting appropriate energy into the things that are important. So each of these types is going to struggle in different ways. 4s are spending so much of their energy on their emotional life and thinking about the ways that they are connected to other people and what other people think about them, that they don't engage what they need to do to get things done. They don't make decisions well because they're worried about what other people are going to think about their decisions, and how they want to make sure they feel right about the things that need to get done. And they don't make big decisions because they're so much wrapped up in how big decisions are made. They just sort of like think about it and how do they feel, and I need to know that this decision is right, and blah, blah. And it means they don't ever get to actually making and doing the thing that they're trying to accomplish. 5s spend all of their restricted energy on their mental life, on how things work, on taking in and categorizing data. They are naturally observing the world, and because they want to be observers, they don't engage the world. They would much rather watch and take notes than to actually be part of what's happening. And 9s, wanting this peaceful space around them, 9s don't put good energy into things that need to get done, into making sure that they're actually like accomplishing goals, because it's really easy to get lost in whatever's in front of me. It's really easy to just sort of relax into spaces of sort of shutting off my brain. And this can involve a lot of activity. I know a lot of 9s that are very busy people, but they're not doing, they forget a lot of stuff. They miss a lot of appointments because they're so wrapped up in the thing that they're doing at the moment that they're not productively doing what needs to get done. And so all of these types, I love talking about this with Sean. His book, Speaking by the Numbers, is basically about stance and also about professional communication. I think it's a really great. I cannot recommend this book enough. But one of the things that we talked about was the idea of purpose. So 4s, 5s, and 9s, because that the doing the action center is also part of understanding the world in an intuitive kind of way. We all don't assign appropriate purpose to the things that need to get done. So we don't engage things in that, like, knowing what needs to get done when it needs to get done kind of way.
An image that you and I talked about on that front ended up being the open tab on a web browser. That There's like 20 open tabs, and it's a symbol of I've gone down 18 rabbit trails.
Right.
Kind of just meandering, looking at things. They may be emotional. They may be intellectual. I'm going to study this a little bit more. It might just be like, this is something that makes me feel calm and safe, and
right.
But nothing's being accomplished. You're doing a bunch of stuff, but you're not accomplishing.
Right. Well, and one or two of those tabs might be something that you actually need to do, but you have not looked at those tabs in maybe days.
Yep. I had this experience. I'm looking for a tile, and I got like 12 tiles open on a web browser, and I have not clicked on, I'm going to go with this. Whereas I could see, like, and my wife or an 8 friend just kind of looking, go, it's that one, bang, go.
Right.
Let's do something else.
Yeah.
And that's there. I suppose I'm empathizing.
Yeah. 3s, 7s, and 8s have already, the thing is already on the way, and they're on to something else, while 4s, 5s, and 9s are still trying to decide what they want.
Yep. It's a strange move here. Like, the 4s are going to be emotional, but there's also the work of emotions and processing things well and using your emotions in a way that you're acting in the world.
Right.
Easiest one is 5s. So 5s, like, it's one thing to think through all the data. It's another thing to act on the data in a way that produces results.
Right.
It's one thing to intuit the world, understand the world. It's another thing to actually push the world forward into places of true peace and harmony.
Right.
There's work there. Work of engagement. Would that be a better, like, there's something about engaging other people in the world around us.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's productivity is and it's a key. It's such a good word in this space, because there's a lot of work going on for these 3 types, but spinning in your feelings is not the same as engaging what you need to do because of your feelings.
Mm-hmm. What each of these types do is they use past tools to get what they want. And so that will be what engaging productive doing actually looks like. It's grabbing hold of these past tools, moving them into the present moment in the thing that needs to get done.
Right. I mean, these 3 types are so, like, those past tools. It's almost like we're longing for a time that has already come and gone, or we're reminiscing or whatever else. Like, the way that we conceive of the past, in order to move out of this unproductive doing, like, there's something to get there. There's, like, it's really easy to say, I wish things were how they used to be. It's another thing to say, remember how things used to be? How do we get where we're at now? Like, what can we do to bring that feeling forward?
Yeah. We need to pull the insights that we've learned. We need to pull our past experiences with other people have shaped things this way, and we should probably learn from that and move in that direction.
Right.
Don't you realize that when we have done things badly in the past, it's created a bunch of chaos in this realm? We need to make sure that we're acting on that in the moment.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah. And also recognizing that, like, you can't go backwards. The thing that you're looking at, you can't actually get back there. there's something valuable there that you are trying to get. Part of our work is figuring out what is the thing that you're trying to get from that past.
Yeah. There's a delight in remembering. There's a delight in saying history or reminiscing and all the rest.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't live there. You got to
Right.
pull. You got to
Right.
push into action.
Right.
Well, some exercises that strike me as valuable on this end. The first one that hit me, I'd be real curious. I'm going to be real curious what your thoughts are on this. I'm going to tell TJ, here's all the things that you need to be doing. First is, I think that it's very helpful to, one, consider your work as sacred, as valuable, as having real purpose, and to structure your days around it. That there is a time where you condition yourself to begin working. This is a common practice for me. At this point in time, this is when I start. And my body just knows it now. But I imagine that's much more difficult for 4s, 5s, and 9s.
I agree with that. I also think that like purpose is a really important thing here because if you don't see any actual value in your work, then you have to maybe manufacture it or find work that you do find valuable.
Yeah.
So say for instance you work at Home Depot, but you really the reason you work at Home Depot is to pay the bills. There is a value involved there. Your job may not be important, but being purposeful about doing work in order to provide space for the things that you actually want to do, that could be a perspective that gives purpose and meaning to the incredibly unmeaningful work of big retail. So even if I think this is a good practice, like finding some way to give importance and purpose and saying that my work is sacred. You may have to get a little creative about how you see your work in order to get to this place.
Yeah. Building on that, and this is going to be true of the next 3 types as well, but there is something about prioritization, of prioritizing this is meaningful and important more than the other things on the list.
Right.
If you can have a prioritized list, it's really valuable in that you are assigning purpose to what's in front of you and you're not just stumbling into it. It's like, well, I guess I could do this. There is something about saying this is most important and worthy of my time, and these other 5 things are not at this moment, at least.
Yeah. And that, I think that creating a to-do list can be really valuable here. Organizing your to-do list, it could be entirely arbitrary, but if you give meaning to the order of your to-do list, then it has meaning.
Yep.
This can also be a space where it's probably really good to invite other people to, consult, to help you make, if I didn't invite my spouse into the consideration process of some of my bigger to-do lists, then I wouldn't organize things in a way that considers how she needs my to-do list to go.
Yep. I naturally have this experience given the job that I presently have now. But presently, the work that I've picked up is taking very old buildings and making them amazing. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing about very old buildings is you have to do things in order. And if you don't, you'll screw the process up. Right. So we have to do foundational matters first. And if you don't understand that the things that are the least sexy, the things that cost the most and that nobody will ever see, end up having to take place first. And so we're spending time trenching, adding cable lines, adding, electricity and redoing the circuit boxes and the plumbing. If I get those out of order and I just jump to the drywall and painting and adding art on the wall, but I haven't done anything behind the wall, it's going to just screw everything up. I'm just covering over. There's a prioritization.
The road.
Yeah.
So much of unproductive doing is just kicking the can down the road.
Yeah. Or dressing it up for the time being to just function in the world for a minute. Right. But again, there's the purposelessness at work.
basically house flipping at this point.
Another,
Fine, I'm not bitter.
I don't know what you mean.
Not a big fan of house flipping.
Oh, I get you. Another exercise, and this goes alongside exercise, is I think the 4s, 5s, and 9s need to name a physical hobby they really enjoy. One of the things I see in your life is you do two things that are very physical, both in your work, like the creation, the artistic creation of coffee actually takes a lot of your physicality, and it's putting something into practice in front of you.
Yeah.
And then TJ, you may not know this, is a phenomenal sound engineer, and there's a lot of process and the wrapping of chords, the laying out of here's where the speakers are placed. This is a very physical activity that I assume you really enjoy.
Yeah, it's true. I love that part of the work.
It seems to me this is the place that 4s, 5s, and 9s can struggle, is you have to know what it feels like to get into your body and to be doing something that actually has, both those things have a goal in your life, yeah?
Right. And they have a goal, they have a purpose, and they serve a bigger function. I'm not just gonna go out and like make and dispose lattes. Because what a waste that would be. And like that, I'm not interested in that. I want to serve them to other people, but there's a physicalness that this activity, which I really, really enjoy, has a purpose. And like it's part of something bigger that I'm already doing.
There are countless things that could be put in that space from, like sports of certain sorts. I know one 9 who is an avid hiker, and there's a real connection between moving out of the city into spaces where nobody's around, and the calm they get to experience in that space is very valuable to them. Yeah. But I would put a high emphasis here on the fact that he is engaging his body when he does that. Right. And that's a great good. Right. So, obviously, for example, I mean, TJ can speak to this. TJ has a pain disease that ends up being an obstacle to engaging his body. And so you got to get creative. Yeah.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know that I should exercise, but I think exercising is dumb, and also there's physical limits to it. But the fact of my job is work. It's a physical engagement. It's when I'm running live shows. That's basically like a running one show from start to finish is a tremendous amount of physical work, and it gives me an opportunity to do something I like, that I care about, that I don't think is stupid, and I don't have to go to the gym for it.
Right. Finding the thing that connects with you. What brings you joy? It's the joy of physical exertion. Right. Whatever that, you gotta find that thing. Yeah. On the flip side, there's the unplugging as a discipline for 4s, 5s, and 9s. I bet you everybody struggles with this, but I imagine 4s, 5s, and 9s, especially in relationship to unproductive doing, you got to turn off the screens.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I get lost in it. And I suddenly magically find myself way more productive when I go a few hours or days without screens in front of me.
What are the 3 hours of your day that you're going to name in which all the screens are off?
Right.
That can be real valuable.
Right.
I don't know what this looks like, but I wrote down service. I think 3, 7, well, I think 1s, 2s, and 6s are going to have this in spades. Of how do I help you? How do I help you? Because that's how we connect with the world.
Yeah.
3, 7s, and 8s might be aggressive just in general, and it just comes out, oh, okay, and I can help this person here. But I imagine 4s, 5s, and 9s are going to really need to be intentional about who are the people in my world. I don't have to help everybody, but I do need to help somebody.
Yeah. A lot of us are, we are potentially very generous, but only when you ask.
Sure.
Like, I am not the type of person to offer my help, even when someone is deeply hinting at it, but I will probably say yes if you ask me for it.
Sure.
And the answer is that there's so many different reasons behind that, and like when it comes down to it, it's that I don't, I would rather not do that thing. But if you ask me, of course I'm going to say yes, because I care about you and I'm available, and I don't have a good excuse not to. So, like, the idea of service is, I'm part of it is understanding that you have a role, you have work to do in the world, and stepping into that instead of waiting for someone to pull you into it.
Building on that, a wonderful discipline, and it may not be for the person in front of you. It might be for you in your heart, is being giving and charitable, having loose hands.
Yeah.
4s, 5s, and 9s, that's going to materialize for everybody differently, but there is such a focus on past resources for all three that the surrendering of those resources, that can just be a freeing activity, and it also is something that requires some real effort, but it pays off.
Right.
Again, it's the case, these move us. They're exercises that move us into security and really into health, and that's your best self. That's where joy and happiness often dwell. I suppose the last one would be, again, to circle back to how prayer might work for these types. It seemed to me that being active, again, about blessing others, seemed to me to be a worthy way to talk about prayer. I don't know if you have thoughts on prayer in terms of like where things really connect for you. It might just be I'm going to just do it in the first place.
It's the engagement for me. It is really difficult for me to do any kind of unguided meditation or prayer because I can easily just get lost in the nothing doing. And so practicing something that's guided, like there are lots of apps where people will take you through guided meditations. There's prayer practices that are really intentional and focused, like praying the rosary is a really good practice because it involves something that is repetitive, and you have to sort of be engaged. You have to understand what you're doing in order to get through the whole thing. And it's whereas 3s, 7s, and 8s should be disengaging from their to-do list, this sort of like prayer meditation behavior for 4s, 5s, and 9s is almost like find a to-do list in this space because you need to engage it.
It's a good word. Moving on to the reactive types. 1s, 2s, and 6s are going to struggle with unproductive thinking because they are stuck in the present. The future, the past, these are not tools necessarily available in getting what they want.
What's going on right now, right in front of me.
And often what's in front of me ends up being, what do I need to do for the person in front of me? Mm-hmm. And thoughts on unproductive thinking?
Yeah, this is... I think this is one of my favorites because it's so clearly there are not 1s, 2s, and 6s who aren't thinking. They're just not doing really good productive thinking. They're not using their thoughts in a way that it's almost like they have these weird thought spirals, and watching it happen is, I don't want to say amusing, but only because I don't want to be offensive. 1s, 2s, and 6s struggle a lot with what is mine to do. They struggle with understanding gray areas, and like 1s are very good at black and white. 1s are very good at focusing in on a system of morality, of like, this is the way the world is supposed to be, and they only see what fits and what doesn't. And they don't see the myriad of ways that everything kind of fits and everything kind of doesn't fit. And there's so much in between this space of what it should be and what it shouldn't be that they really struggle with processing what's right because there's so much gray. There's so much gray in the world, and they struggle to understand that gray. 2s are not engaged with themselves appropriately, and they just want to be helpful to other people. They gain their value from being attached to other people, and so obviously there's always something that other people need, and I am going to continue doing the things that other people need. And they struggle with thinking about what is mine to do, what is important for me, because they aren't focused on themselves at all. And sixes who do not trust themselves and don't trust the world, don't trust that things are going to work out. It's this inability to know what's right. It's all three of these types are essentially, they're looking for outside validation to help them understand their thoughts, or even just shutting down their own thoughts and letting someone else do the thinking for them.
Materializes commonly as verbal processing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've experienced in my own life on this front is I need to get my intuitions around my thought life, and that's why I'm verbally processing. Once I speak it, then my intuitions, which is my intelligence center, can take hold of it as a one. Right. I see twos doing it, they speak it, and then their emotional heart can, grab hold of the words and kind of get a sense of where they are in the world. In sixes, when they speak, they're trying to get their heads around the things they're speaking to other people, and that's why they're doing it.
Right.
We are the ready, fire, aim crew. We're not engaging aiming. We're engaging those other elements of doing and heart, and that's just where we feel most comfortable.
Right.
All sorts of rabbit trails for our heads to spin down because we don't have prioritized thinking, and we're not being productive.
Right. And then as you think about those thoughts, then you have other thoughts about those thoughts, and we all do this to some degree, but ones, twos, and sixes are particularly good at chaining, which is like connecting this one thing to this other thing and following this trail to where you get so far away from where you started that nobody understands what's happening.
I say it all the time. My favorite quote is from William James. He says, "Wisdom is the art of knowing what to overlook." And wisdom is the thing that these types need most.
Yep.
Wisdom is hard to find, but here's some exercises might get you on the path. One of the better books that I've read recently, it's actually 5 years old, 10 years old now, is just called The One Thing. And for both reactive types and for withdrawn types, this is a fantastic book. It's just about prioritization. And, a key truth that we know is that 80% of the results in your life come from 20% of the effort. And so focusing on that, what's the most important 20% of your effort, and elevating the things that are the point. What is most essential, and just getting your head around, here's what's most essential, and anchoring there can be hugely important for these three types.
Right.
You hear it in that language of the Stabile mantra that we say all the time, what's mine to do? That's about prioritization.
Right.
Had a conversation with a 6 yesterday. Everything that she was struggling with is about not being able to prioritize. And so there's waves of information coming at you. There's waves of things you could be doing in the world.
Yeah.
If you cannot categorize, if you can't say, this doesn't matter for now, this doesn't matter for now, here's the thing that's most essential that's going to get my time, then you're just going to get tossed about by the waves coming at you.
Right. And notice that, in talking about prioritization with withdrawn types, with 4s, 5s, and 9s, the goal there is to get them to actually do the to-do list.
Yep.
When talking about prioritization with 1s, 2s, and 6s, with the unproductive thinking, the goal is to do the list in the right order and to get rid of the stuff that shouldn't be on the list.
Yeah. It's almost an opposite. It's the stop doing list that's really important for reactive types.
Yeah.
Here are 12 things that are it's just a waste of your energy, your heart, your emotional core.
Or even here's a handful of things that you can do later and it will be fine.
Yeah.
It's almost like the meeting in the middle of withdrawn and aggressive types. 1s, 2s, and 6s are trying to do everything on the list and give it all equal importance. And some of those things aren't important and you can wait for them to be done later. Yep. Just like aggressive types.
There was a whole company for a while there, Franklin Covey, that had a day planner, and the whole system was just based around prioritization. It was just saying, what are the things you must take care of this week? What are the things that are secondary, and what can we label as third tier? And just being, his whole system was based on focus on the things that are very important that are not urgent. Urgent things matter, but really getting ahead is always about elevating the things that are really important and do not have urgency.
Yeah.
That's your education. That's investments in your relationships. That's building your business. That's, those are always the places where we really get ahead.
Right. And for 1s, 2s, and 6s who are present focused, they're always reacting to what's urgent.
Correct.
And so this unproductive thinking, the work here is elevating, understanding what is important, but not exclusively reacting to what's urgent.
This, just as a footnote, is why I reject the words compliant and dependent. What's really taking place for 1s, 2s, and 6s is that they're reacting.
Sure.
It might be the case that if there's an authority figure, they're complying with the authority figure, or they're dependent on the authority figure. And for 1s, that might be their super ego and the demands of their conscience.
Right.
I just don't jive with that, though. Like when I really experience the world, it's much more that the world is coming at me and I need to react for myself to do the right thing. For the 2s, to have the relational connection that they desire most. And for 6s, it's am I safe? And it ends up being, I think, much more of a reactive posture. And because of that, if you can name it as reactive, then you can do something about it.
Right.
Well, how do you shore this sucker up?
Right.
Second thing, practice I think is real valuable is memorization. This is a place where we get our heads around what's most essential. Mm-hmm. So you memorize quotes that really bring form and wisdom and insight into the spaces that you do life.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Suzanne Stabile all the time, I suppose, but she does a fantastic job of she memorizes really important things and is constantly just kind of pulling out these wonderful mantras to emphasize the points that she's making, but often the points she's making are about how she is moving as a healthy person in the world.
Right.
And
it helps that she reads like it's going out of style.
It's true. It's another fantastic practice for 1s, 2s, and 6s.
It's hard to memorize if you're never taking in new things.
Memorization builds up your mental framework. Yeah. And it's one of those things that naturally prioritizes. Yeah. If you memorize something important to you, by its nature, you're saying this matters more than other things.
It's working out your brain.
Here's the hardest of the exercises I have for 1s, 2s, and 6s, and it's secrecy. You need to keep some stuff to yourself. I think that these types have a very difficult time with secrecy, and I think it's very valuable.
I want to add some nuance to this.
Yeah, do it.
Intentional secrecy.
Right.
Because I think all of these types keep some things secret very easily. And I think a lot of those things are the things that they shouldn't be keeping secret.
Sure. Yeah. This is correct.
Yeah. And like we're talking about the verbal processing and there's so much about 1s, 2s, and 6s that they feel like they have to share, or that they can't not, or they need someone else to say whether or not this thought is appropriate. Like there's so much of that like the verbal processing is so present in 1s, 2s, and 6s. Yeah. And some of that stuff you don't need to share with other people. And intentionally keeping it to yourself and letting yourself ruminate on some of that stuff is probably a really good thing to do.
That's it. It's mentally saying, this is something that's important, and I'm going to work on it by myself for a while. Mm-hmm. I don't think that these 3 types do that very well, and they should. They should build those muscles. Other types have no problem with that. But these types would really benefit from saying, I'm going to hold this and do hard work on it.
Yeah. And I think I also want to draw a line here that journaling and I think that therapy is a place where you don't necessarily need secrecy in this way. Like there are some spaces where you need help with the thing that you're working on, and sharing it with a trusted advisor that is actively helping you through that is very different from telling every single person in your life that this is something that you're struggling with.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think that's wise. Brings us to journaling. Journaling can be a fantastic place for you to get your thoughts on paper so that you can respond to them with your intelligence center. Mm-hmm. That's my experience of journaling.
Yeah.
I get out the things that I really care about and the stuff that's trash. I mean, actually, it's a fantastic thing for 80% of the things that I throw down on paper to be trash.
Right.
And I'll keep the 20%, hold on to it as something that I need to ruminate on.
Right.
But when I put especially in the times where I really have struggled relationally, writing down my feelings on paper allows a process to take place for me as a one, where my intelligence center kicks in again, similar to verbal processing, but my intelligence center looks at the words, feels them intuitively, and is able to understand them better than if I'm just trying to keep them in my head.
Right. I like to say cleaning out the attic here.
Yep.
And that, like, cleaning out the attic is not necessarily a 100% disposal.
Right.
It is a lot of, like, clearing out cobwebs and going through some things and getting rid of some trash. But also, you know, the family heirlooms and the things that are up in the attic, because you don't need them out, but you do need them stored. You need to keep them. That's part of cleaning out the attic. And engaging with this practice of figuring out what is important and what's not. Like, that's all over what we're talking about.
Yep. I lied. This is the hardest one. You need to silence the media for a variety of reasons. 6s, it's just going to terrify you more. 1s, it's just going to make you pissed off. And 2s, you're just going to compare yourself with others through this. It's important to be informed, finding healthy outlets, which generally means print journalism, not opinion pieces. And dear God,
Once
avoid
a day
the
print journalism.
Yeah. Cable news and opinion is not a good place to get your news.
Yep.
Print journalism are experts who have a craft that has been proven for hundreds of years. And there's a huge difference between, quote unquote, the media and real print journalism. And if you need to engage the world, that's the place to do it.
Yeah. Agreed.
But you got to get rid of that other trash.
Yeah. Or at least figure out a way to engage. Like Facebook is not a good place to get your news. Stop getting your news from Facebook. But you can
worse.
Find out that your cousin is pregnant from Facebook. That's fine. That is what Facebook should be for. But if you're getting news articles from Facebook, stop that. Just stop doing it. The world is a worse place because we get our news from Facebook.
Yep. Agreed. Pay the money. Get the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post. Read only the journalism, and you will be balanced and informed.
And this also gives you an opportunity to like engage with something that is important about making the world a better, safer, more relational place, because you are helping. Like, there's a lot to be said about, you know, capitalism and paying for things, but like when you pay for a subscription to your newspaper,
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
you are paying someone else to be an expert on this thing, as opposed to getting theories from your third cousin who lives in a totally different country than you.
Yeah. Yeah, the news they're promoting is being funded by ads for erectile dysfunction. It's that kind of junk. And local news, like get your local newspaper. That's also very valuable. Although 6s avoid the sections where they're talking about local murders and the rest. That's not good for you. Lastly, for this crew, I think prayer walking is very valuable. It gets them moving. They're doing something. They know they should be doing it. You're out, you're doing stuff. And because you're doing stuff, it actually allows you to get your head going as well eventually. And that's at least my experience. Is my thinking process works best when I have shoes on and I'm outside and I'm going. And I have just found, especially in terms of trying to connect my heart and mind to God and my place in the world and the things that are important in processing all the things, that can be another place of shoring up my mental life.
Yeah. It's a sort of getting away from the to-do list.
Yeah.
While also still doing something.
Yep. Nothing to react to when you're out there.
Right.
I can't improve anything. I can't compare myself. Hopefully if you're 6, hopefully you've found a safe space to walk and you feel comfortable or something like that. So that's what I got for reactive types. I got one last thing I want to hit. I had 3 things that popped and it just worked for all the types as exercises that I think really do a good job of shoring up our repressed center. And so I just threw them down, and just for everybody, you need to take a day off. Traditionally, this is called Sabbath, but for 3, 7s, and 8s, obviously it is inviting you to create those spaces where you're taking time to think about and process your own emotions. And it's not just go, 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 go.
Right.
Like that is super satisfying, invigorating, a place of joy, and it can be an unexpected gift.
Right. Oftentimes
that means putting a big X on a day each week and saying nothing happens here, and there's no problems to solve this day.
And I cannot say this enough, and you might have to get wall stencils to put this on your wall to be reminded of this over and over again. But if you make a to-do list for your day off, it is not a day off. You cannot organize your day off and actually take a day off.
Would that apply to the 4s, 5s, and 9s?
Nope.
You need
4s,
to
5s,
do.
It's the exact opposite.
Productive resting.
Yep.
Requires you to get.
4s, 5s, 9s on their day off. You need to figure out what you're doing. Because it's really easy to just sit around and do nothing all day.
That's exactly right. You need to name how you're going to rest.
Yep.
I think 1s, 2s, and 6s require that as well. I at least do. I need to say, I am going to go skiing. Mm-hmm. That actually is very difficult for me because I'm turning everything else off.
Yeah.
Like that actually is a great physical. Well, I know a buddy of mine who's a 7, and that's his move is on Fridays. He actually turns his computer off. He doesn't set it to sleep. He shuts the sucker down. Mm-hmm. And that's the key to him saying, I have entered a new space.
Yeah.
So I feel it when I go down into my basement. I have a projector in my basement, which I super enjoy. Watching documentaries, watching movies I've seen 12,000 times. This is just how I rest, and it's very invigorating for me. But when I'm walking down into the basement, that's when I can feel my body say, oh, we have entered this space now.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like for everybody, but you need to find it.
Right. And there's something to be said about making this a really intentional and regular practice. It's one of the 7 days for a reason. It's not once a year. It's like there's bigger things that you can do on a more long-term kind of basis, but you need to get into a rhythm of taking some time off.
Yeah.
And not doing the same things that you do every day, because if you don't create space. Like there's no margin if you don't make a margin.
Chris here says something in the Sacred Enneagram that is something to the extent of, if you don't create these spaces of rest and restoration, then your time off is eventually going to become forced.
Yeah. And
it's going to be only recovery.
Yep.
And that's not the thriving life that you want. That's not flourishing.
Right. Yeah, we're spending an awful lot of time talking about burnout.
Yeah,
within the last several years. And that conversation has amped up like crazy in the last year. And it's because we all took a year off and didn't stop working.
Right. Or we had to figure out whole new systems. Like my wife's in education. It is unbelievable what the solutions were. It was like, we're going to teach half the kids in person, half the kids online.
Yeah.
And so we're going to create double the amount of lesson planning.
It was almost an entire year of the whole world can't do things. And there are several professions which was like, okay, great. We're going to add more stuff to your list. That's how you create burnout. And burnout is not rest.
God bless you, nurses. The second one I had was gardening. This may be kind of out of left field. I think this is a really healthy practice for everyone. And it's not just my, I'm sliding this in because I got into gardening during COVID. There is something that our culture has lost in the ability to connect ourselves to the natural order. And there's something about the doing of it. I plant something in the ground. I consistently feed it. I watch it grow. And then I actually enjoy the fruit from it.
Yeah.
That is incredibly satisfying. For 3, 7s, and 8s, it forces you to kind of stop.
Right.
And do something that is much more of a caring almost gesture.
Mm-hmm.
For 4s, 5s, and 9s, this is a productive doing, and for
Yeah.
1s, 2s, and 6s, it gets you in a space that I imagine it's similar to meditation for me, where I'm watering something and my mind, it centers in those spaces in a way that's very healthy. It's a silence. I've a lot 1s, 2s, and 6s need some silence as well, for their mental life.
Yeah. It's also like there's so many different ways to garden that it doesn't have to be like you say gardening and I immediately picture a sweet little old lady planting tulips. And it's like, if that's what you like, great. But if what you actually want to garden is corn, that's also gardening.
Right.
If you're trying to grow weeds or trees to build a barrier to keep out your neighbors, that's also gardening. There's lots of different ways that you can, the act of engaging with the earth and growing something on purpose. That's the aim with that. I really like that as a recommendation.
There's something, just to build one last step on that, the intentionality of dealing with my food waste grounds me in a way I would never have guessed.
Yeah.
That I have this little container that sits on my counter for food waste, and I've just watched one YouTube video about how to create compost. And now it's going to sound disgusting, but I love the hell out of it. I got like 300 worms feasting on this stuff outside, and it brings me such joy. Because
we got worms.
worm castings produce fantastic soil, which produces fantastic food. There ends up being, I don't know. I would strongly recommend if you need a soul practice. It's been invigorating for me, especially in a culture like ours.
And if your act of gardening is trying to grow food, that also helps deal with the rising price of food right now.
This is true.
Because you can grow your own.
You will singularly drive down oil prices because you're not having people, drive lettuce in from California to wherever you're living right now.
Right.
Last one, and this is all the types struggle with being present. You're either past-oriented, future-oriented, or 8s, 9s, and 1s. You're resistant to the present. The last practice I have is celebration, which is being present and sipping in the joys of life as they have come. Another way of spinning that is gratitude, creating finish lines, creating spaces where you say, I am thankful. It used to be the case that, or many families, I suppose, still do this. You sit down at the meal with your family and you say grace, and this is a place of gratitude. Mm-hmm. Finding that rhythm, that's powerful.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to be said about just like a general gratitude practice of like engaging and contemplating where you are, who you are, what's going on in your life, and figuring out how to be grateful for things that are good. Mm-hmm. Like it's good for your brain, it's good for your heart, but also there's the idea of like really intentionally creating space for celebration. Not just a regular gratitude practice, but also like real celebration of marking things that you have accomplished and saying this was a good thing and celebrating that. There's going to be a need to accomplish for withdrawn types. There's going to be an engagement with I did something that was good for reactive types. And there's going to be a pausing to celebrate the thing that has happened and not just moving to the next thing.
That's it.
For the aggressive types.
Yep. Super important. Finding those spaces where you can really be fully present. Essential. Yep. It's just essential. You know what else we celebrate here, TJ?
What?
Stars. We like stars.
Woo.
You can put these on Spotify or iTunes before you shut off this podcast, and we will send you great love and gratitude. Another thing you can do is
celebrate. Hooray!
It may be the case that this is one of those things worth talking about with other people who are into the Enneagram, is common practices that you want to bring into your life here into the future. And talking with others who do Enneagram stuff, as we talk about in step 2, ends up being incredibly valuable. Mm-hmm. Here's something I'm working on in terms of shoring up places I'm weakest. Yep. So share this episode with somebody that you love, preferably somebody that you're doing life with, talking shop with, interested in seeing you become a better person. These are all great. Hey, you know what else we're doing in terms of talking with people?
What?
We have an online event. And I should say we are starting online events in June because these will be regular. But we would love to have you show up to the first one. We have well over 30 people who are signed up. It's going to be good times. I would love to get that up to 60 or 70 and just kind of have a full room, because then we can do some fun stuff, because we can create rooms for your type to talk to other people of your type and process all the things. And I promise we'll make it safe. We'll make it enjoyable. We got new stuff worth thinking about. And those start in June. If you go to aroundthecircle.org, click on events, or click on the button that says Patreon, it'll send you to the link so that you can join up with us.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun, and it's gonna be online. You don't even have to wear pants.
We would prefer everybody that joins us to wear pants.
Hey, if we can't see it on screen,
you get fired from CNN for doing stuff like that.
Well, luckily, I don't work for CNN, so I am not putting on pants, sir. So.
If you want to see TJ without pants, sign up. This is definitely. All right, man. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
He's TJ Wilson. He's officially awesome, and actually, I can't tell if you have pants or not. So, and I'm not gonna ask.
See.
I'm Jeff Cook, and I'm wearing pants, and who you aren't isn't interesting. Join us on June 12th.